John and I had been trying to have a baby for 3 years, 3 long, heartbreaking years filled with doctor appointments, fertility treatments, crushed hopes, and quiet prayers. When I finally got pregnant, we were overjoyed. But the pregnancy wasn't easy. I suffered from severe morning sickness that lasted for months, developed gestational diabetes, and was put on bed rest for the last 6 weeks. It was exhausting, physically, emotionally, and mentally. But none of it mattered when our daughter, Alexis, finally arrived. She was everything we had dreamed of and more. Before we go any further, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. I love seeing how far this little story can travel. Let's make this space feel a little more connected, no matter how many miles are between us. Unfortunately, the problems didn't begin after Alexis was born, they started long before. John's mother, Judy, had always been controlling, but during my pregnancy, her obsession spiraled. She insisted on being in the delivery room. Constantly reminded me, sometimes kindly, often not, that she had raised 2 children and knew far better than I ever could. Her husband, John Sr., wasn't much different. He echoed Judy's every opinion and treated me like I was just the vessel carrying their future, John Williams Everett III, not a mother, just an incubator. Looking back, I can see the warning signs clearly. I just didn't know how far they would go. But the real issue wasn't just Judy or John Sr., it was my sister-in-law, Ziva. She is John's younger sister and the golden child of the family. She married her high school sweetheart, David Brooks, 5 years ago, and they had been trying, unsuccessfully, to have a baby ever since. The fertility struggles hit Ziva hard, but instead of working through her pain in a healthy way, she let it twist into bitterness. Resentment oozed from her every glance and words, especially toward anyone who had what she couldn't. During my pregnancy, she made cruel, passive-aggressive comments like, "Some people just get everything handed to them, and life's so unfair, isn't it?" And Judy? She defended her every time. "Ziva would be such a wonderful mother," she'd say with a heavy sigh. "It's just heartbreaking that good people like her can't have children while others take it for granted." They never said it outright, but I heard the message loud and clear, I didn't deserve my baby. Not the way Ziva did. What they always seemed to forget, or maybe just chose to ignore, was that I didn't just blink and get pregnant. It took me 3 agonizing years to conceive. 3 years of tests, hormone shots, disappointment, and heartbreak. And even once I was pregnant, it wasn't easy. I was constantly sick. I battled brutal morning sickness, gestational diabetes, and was so weak I spent the last month and a half on bed rest. None of them ever acknowledged that. John saw what was happening. He tried to protect me, shield me from the snide remarks, the judgmental glances, the subtle exclusion. But he was caught between defending me and keeping the fragile peace with his family. I could see the toll it was taking on him too. We talked about setting boundaries, limiting contact with his family after Alexis was born. But as much as we tried to prepare for conflict, we never could have imagined just how far they would go. Alexis was born on a Tuesday morning, February 29th, a leap year baby, after 12 exhausting hours of labor. She was perfect. Weighing 7 pounds, 2 ounces, she had a head full of dark hair like John's and my green eyes. The moment I saw her, I knew every moment of pain, every tear, every year we spent trying, it had all been worth it. I was completely drained, but euphoric. John cried when he held her for the first time. Really cried. His shoulders shook as he whispered to her how loved she was, how long we had waited for her, and how he would protect her with everything he had. For a few precious hours in that hospital room, the world stood still. It was just the 3 of us, our little family. No drama. No judgments. No bitterness. Just peace. But of course, that didn't last. When John Sr. came to visit, he barely glanced at Alexis before his face fell. "A girl," he muttered, clearly disappointed. "Well, maybe the next one will be a boy. John needs a son, someone to carry on the family name." He said it like Alexis didn't even matter. Like she wasn't enough. Judy, of course, clucked disapprovingly at the hospital decor, asked why we hadn't dressed Alexis in something less plain, and criticized the swaddle the nurse had used. Ziva didn't come at all. They couldn't even pretend to be happy for us. They didn't care that I had fought tooth and nail to bring this baby into the world. That I had spent months sick, weak, and afraid. That we had suffered for years before finally holding this child. They just wanted what they wanted, and Alexis wasn't what they wanted. After 3 short days in the hospital, we finally brought Alexis home. Judy and John Sr. only visited once while we were admitted, but when we pulled into the driveway, they were all suddenly there. Zara and David were waiting. Judy stood at the door like she owned the place, John Sr. pacing nearby, and Ziva hovering close with her husband David by her side, smiling too much. Too eagerly. They all insisted they just wanted to help. John carried the car seat inside while I struggled to keep my eyes open. I was still recovering, still sore and aching, and Alexis had been nursing almost non-stop. I hadn't slept for more than an hour at a time since her birth, and my body felt like it was held together by sheer willpower and adrenaline. As we got settled, John realized we forgot to buy diapers. "I'll run to the store," he said, grabbing his keys. That's when Judy chimed in, her voice honey-sweet and carefully casual. "You should go lie down, Gail. Get some rest while John's out. We've got everything covered." I hesitated. My instincts were screaming. Then Ziva added, "We'll wake you when she needs to nurse." "I promise." John Sr. gave me a nod, as if that settled it. "They're just trying to help," he said to John, giving me a look that barely masked his disapproval, as if I was being difficult for not immediately handing over my child. I wanted to argue. I wanted to say no. But my body was shaking from exhaustion, and my mind was foggy. I looked at Alexis, sleeping peacefully in her bassinet, and I told myself it would be okay. Just an hour. Just enough to reset. I gave in. When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was the silence. The second was the pain, sharp, aching fullness in my breasts. I winced, instinctively reaching for Alexis to feed her, but my hands met nothing but a tangle of blankets. The bassinet beside the bed was empty. I sat up fast, heart racing. The house was too quiet. "John?" I called, my voice dry and raw. He appeared almost instantly in the doorway, smiling gently. "Hey, you're up. I didn't want to wake you. You really needed the rest." "Where's Alexis?" I asked, my voice cracking. His smile faltered. "What do you mean?" "She's with you." "No, she's not." I was already throwing off the covers, stumbling out of bed. "She's not here, John. She hasn't been." He blinked, clearly confused. "Wait, what?" "My breasts are killing me. She hasn't fed in hours." "Where is she?" He started moving then, fast, checking the bassinet, the corners of the room, as if she might somehow be hiding. "She's not here," I whispered. "John, she's gone." His eyes went wide. "She was supposed to be with you." I thought you had her." We ran through the house together, calling her name like she could answer. Each empty room made it worse. The panic was climbing now, choking me. We stood in the nursery. John was already pulling out his phone, his hands shaking. "They told me she was with you," he said, his voice low, horrified. "All this time, I thought she was right next to you." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "Call them. Call now." He hit Ziva's contact. It rang. No answer. Then he tried his parents' home phone. Judy picked up on the second ring. "John," she said, all breezy politeness. "Where is Alexis?" he snapped. "Where the hell is my daughter?" There was a pause, and when she spoke again, her voice was different, flat. "Cold. The family decided," she said, like she was discussing dinner plans. Your first child needs to be a boy. So we're giving this one to your sister. John froze. I could hear my own heartbeat in the silence. What? He whispered. She deserves a child more than you two. And let's be honest, you'll have more. Your father's sister is handling the birth certificate, she works in records. Being born on a leap year made it so convenient to adjust. I sank to the floor, knees buckling under me. I could barely process what I was hearing. John's voice broke. You're stealing our child, our daughter, because she's not a boy? Before she could answer, there was a click on the line. John Sr. had picked up the extension. This isn't up for debate, he said firmly. The decision has been made. Accept it and get started on making that son. And then the line went dead. John stared at the phone like it had turned to ash in his hands. We stood there in silence, in shock, in something darker than grief. John stood frozen for a second, then redialed with trembling fingers, his face pale, jaw clenched. I watched him pace as it rang, his desperation radiating off him in waves. John Sr. answered with a bored sigh, like this was nothing more than an inconvenience. That's my baby, John said, his voice cracking under the weight of fury and panic. You can't just give her away. You have no right. His father cut him off. Can't you be grateful for once, he said, as if he were scolding a child. You solved everyone's problems. Ziva gets the baby she deserves, and you get to start over. Start over? John echoed, stunned. She deserves a child more than you do, John Sr. said matter-of-factly. You should be thankful Gail carried her to term safely. But it's done now. I don't want to hear any more about it. And just like that, he hung up. John lowered the phone slowly, like it was something foreign in his hands. His face was blank at first. Then the realization hit, sharp and brutal. He turned to me, his voice barely above a whisper. They really did it, he said. They think they've won. I stared at him, barely able to breathe. But in that moment, something shifted in his eyes. The disbelief twisted into something else, determination, anger. They think this is over, he said. They think they can take her and will just lie down and accept it. His voice dropped, cold and dangerous. They have no idea who they're up against. John didn't say another word. He just grabbed his phone again, and this time, he dialed 911. While he was giving the dispatcher the details, I made the call that would change everything. My brother, Jason. Jason and his two best friends had started their own law firm just 2 years earlier. Jason specialized in criminal law. His best friend Kevin, who had been like a second brother to me growing up, handled family law. And their third partner, Donald, was a tax attorney. The three of them had met in their final year of law school and clicked immediately. Jason and Kevin had always dreamed of starting their own firm, and Donald was the missing piece. While most tax lawyers chased corporate clients and big paychecks, Donald made it clear he had no interest in saving the rich. He wanted to help people, especially the elderly, navigate a system stacked against them. He said once, everyone needs someone to defend the little guy. Even from the IRS. Jason and Kevin had been planning to build a firm since high school. They were loyal, fierce, and smart, and I knew the second Jason picked up, he'd be all in. I didn't even get through the whole story before Jason cut me off. Let me call Kevin. We're on our way over right now. Next, I called my sister's husband, Tom. He and I had gone to school together. He was 2 years ahead of me, a protective big brother type even back then. Now he was a cop. A good one. He answered on the first ring. Gail. It's Alexis, I said, my voice breaking. John's calling 911 right now. His family, say no more, Tom said. I'm on my way. And he hung up. In just a few minutes, the helplessness started to fade. My husband's family had betrayed us. They took our daughter and acted like it was their right. Like our feelings didn't matter. Like Alexis didn't belong to us. But while they turned their backs on us, my brothers stepped in without question. Jason showed up immediately, calm but ready to fight. Kevin was right behind him, Tom already thinking of what we needed to do next. They were just there. Strong. Certain. Ready. John's family broke something. But mine held us together. We were still standing in the nursery when the doorbell rang. The room felt like a cruel joke now, a train-themed nursery, decorated with so much love and care. Everyone had been so sure I was having a boy. Judy, John Sr., even Ziva had said it out loud more than once, like a boy would have been the only acceptable outcome. But we'd gotten Alexis. Our beautiful, perfect daughter. And now, she was gone. John checked the ring camera and stiffened. It's the police. Him and Tom rushed downstairs to let them in while I stayed behind with Jason, Kevin, the moment they stepped out and disappeared down the hall. Jason turned to me. Do you have outdoor cameras? We might have footage of them taking her. I nodded, already pulling up the Ring app. Together, we crowded around my phone. I hit play on the most recent clip, and there they were. Ziva. David. Judy. John Sr. They were walking out calmly, almost smugly. David glanced up at the camera and pointed directly at it. That's when Judy leaned in slightly and said, clear as day, I'm so glad John and Gail agreed to give the baby to Ziva. We watched, breathless, as they loaded Alexis into the car. Ziva unbuckled her from the infant seat like she'd done it 100 times, then cradled her close and slid into the front seat, no car seat, no seatbelt. Nothing. And then they sped off. Too fast. Too casual. Too reckless. My hands were shaking as I grabbed the phone and ran into the living room where Tom, John, and one of the responding officers, a tall man who introduced himself as Detective Jordan, were deep in conversation. Look. I said, showing them the footage. Look what they did. They watched in silence. When it ended, Tom exhaled sharply. John looked like he might break something. This doesn't help us as much as you think, Detective Jordan said carefully. It looks like you agreed to give them the baby. We can argue it was unsafe, no car seat, unrestrained, but it still paints this as a family arrangement, not a kidnapping. My stomach dropped. Jason ran a hand through his hair. They played this so damn well. As Detective Jordan, John, and Tom left to confront his family, I stood frozen in the hallway, helpless. Then Kevin stepped out of the nursery, holding something small and familiar in his hand. Followed right behind him was Jason. Is this the baby monitor? Kevin asked, his voice unusually calm. The one my mom recommended. The one with motion sensors and automatic recording? I nodded slowly, confused. Yeah. I mentioned it months ago when I was registering. But I set it up myself. I don't even think Judy remembered. Jason raised an eyebrow. You sure? I exhaled, the memory coming back in pieces. She waved me off. Said something like, all this tech. In my day, good mothers didn't need all that nonsense. I gave a bitter smile. It was one of her usual comments, half insult, half nostalgia. After that, I don't think she gave it a second thought. She didn't even know we bought it. Kevin was already pulling out his laptop. That might be the best thing she ever did, forgetting. It saves to its own cloud, right? Yes, I said, heart racing. It's all backed up. Automatically. Jason looked up, fire in his eyes. Then we've got them. Every word. Every lie. Every second. And that's when it hit me like lightning. John called them from the nursery. Put them on speaker. So I could hear. We were standing right there. Kevin's fingers froze over the keyboard. You're saying the whole phone call, everything they said, is on here? Judy, John Sr., the moment they admitted it. It's all there. Jason didn't wait another second. Let's find it. He and Kevin disappeared back into the nursery with the monitor and a new sense of purpose. And for the first time since Alexis was stolen from my arms, I felt like we might finally have the weapon we needed. Zara's house looked perfectly normal, like nothing unthinkable had just occurred. But as Detective Jordan stepped up to the door, flanked by Tom and John, the tension in the air was anything but ordinary. Judy opened the door, smiling as if they were arriving for brunch. "Officers," she greeted smoothly. "Please, come in." Inside, John Sr. rose from the couch with practiced calm. David stood in the corner, arms crossed tightly. But it was Ziva who immediately drew everyone's attention. She moved slowly through the living room, gently rocking a baby wrapped in a pink blanket. Alexis. John's entire body locked up. He could barely breathe. But then they heard her. "Hush hush Tammy," Ziva cooed softly. "It's all right, baby girl. Mommy's here. Does Tammy want a bottle?" Tom blinked. "Did she just say Tammy?" Detective Jordan didn't flinch. "We received a report of a missing infant. We're here to ask some questions." David stepped forward first, his voice unnervingly steady. "This is our baby. Her name is Tammy. She was born last week." John barked, "What the hell are you talking about? She was born last week?" Jordan raised a hand, silencing him. "That's a serious claim," the detective said calmly. "Because we have footage from the Ring doorbell at the baby's home showing her being removed from the property today." Then Judy stood, smoothing her skirt like this was a polite meeting and not a criminal investigation. "I'm sure whatever footage you have is from weeks ago," she said calmly. "Back when we were still discussing Gail's wishes." She gave a thoughtful little tilt of her head, then added, "It must have been Tammy we were carrying in that video, not Alexis. Gail lost her baby last month. A stillbirth. She's been confused ever since." John opened his mouth to protest, but Tom gripped his arm, warning him silently not to explode, "Not yet." Judy kept going, her tone patient, motherly, rehearsed. "You know," she added with a faux sigh, "we did talk about Gail wanting to give the baby to Ziva on the Ring cam. Maybe that's what you picked up." Her gaze sharpened just a fraction, as if anticipating their next move. "Ever since the stillbirth," she continued smoothly, "she and John have both been delusional. They're grieving. They're confused. I wouldn't be surprised if someone," she looked directly at the detective now, "maybe even doctored the footage. Stitched pieces together to make it look like something it wasn't. There it was." The dagger cloaked in concern. "Maybe someone fixed the two recordings." Ziva, still rocking Alexis's Tammy, didn't react. She just kept humming under her breath, lost in whatever dream world she'd built. Jordan studied their faces, one by one, then took a step back. "We'll need to verify all of this," he said. "Do you have any formal documentation? Hospital records? A birth certificate?" Ziva walked over and said, "My Aunt Linda works in records," she said coldly, not quite looking at anyone. "She can get you the birth certificates, for Tammy. And for Gail's dead one." And then she just walked away. The room fell silent. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Detective Jordan finally spoke. "We'll need to look into all of this further." He gestured for John and Tom to follow him outside. They obeyed, still too stunned to speak. When they were a few feet away from the porch, Jordan stopped and turned to them. His voice was quiet, measured, but resolute. "This smells too weird," he said. "Way too weird. Don't worry, we're going to get to the bottom of it." Back at the house, Jason had pulled the baby monitor footage. Kevin, who had quietly been learning more of the tech side of family law, knew exactly what to do. With my laptop, my consent, and one crucial advantage, all of John Sr. and Judy's phone lines, both cell and landline, were in my husband's name. He had set it up years ago to help manage their bills and make things easier for them as they got older. We paid the bills, handled the accounts, kept everything running. And because of that, we had full access. Every call, every text. With Kevin's help, we pulled their phone records, timing every conversation, comparing them to messages between David and Ziva, and cross-referencing it all with the baby monitor footage and ring cam timestamps. What they thought was private had a paper trail. And that paper trail told the real story. The pieces lined up perfectly. With the baby monitor footage synced, within an hour, we had every incoming and outgoing call, every text message, every coordinated step they had taken since the day after they came to visit Alexis in the hospital. He synced the footage, adjusted the audio, and flagged key timestamps. He was calm, focused, and for the first time, it felt like we were finally ahead of them. The fake story, the phone calls, the planning. And now we had a timeline. The phone records laid out, and every message and call documented. We had built something solid, something undeniable. And by some miracle, John's phone had been sitting in direct line of the camera. We didn't just capture their voices, we had a clear shot of his screen, showing who he called, when, and what was said. Jason and Kevin put it all together into a clean, organized file. Timestamps, screenshots, transcripts. Every phone call Judy and John Sr. had made since Alexis was born, laid bare. They hadn't just taken our daughter. They'd planned it, coordinated it, lied to officers, and pretended I was delusional. Kevin called it what it was, premeditated custodial interference, and depending on how far they'd pushed the false paperwork, potentially conspiracy to commit fraud. Detective Jordan returned later that evening, quiet but focused. We handed him the files. He sat at our kitchen table going through the evidence. Every minute or two he would pause, then shake his head. When he looked up, he didn't say much. Just, "This is good. Really good." He pulled out his phone and made 2 calls. One to dispatch. One to the DA's office. Tom, still in uniform, stood at the door, arms crossed, silent and ready. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. By the next morning, things were moving fast. Search warrants were approved, for Ziva's house, for Judy and John Sr. phones and devices, and for the Office of Vital Records. Because we hadn't forgotten the aunt, the one they claimed was handling the paperwork. Detective Jordan had flagged her the moment her name came up. A quick call to the registrar's office revealed even more than we expected, a login used after hours, access to both my hospital records and Alexis's birth file, and a suspicious request for a correction on an infant birth certificate, dated the same day Alexis was taken. But it was sloppy, rushed, and exactly what we needed. By noon, subpoenas had been issued for phone records, digital logs. The unraveling had begun. It started at 6:45 a.m., early enough that the sun had barely risen, the street still soaked in silence. Detective Jordan had called the night before. "We're moving first thing. Be ready." 2 unmarked vehicles pulled up in front of Judy and John Sr.'s house just as the neighborhood was waking up. No sirens. No raised voices. Just quiet authority. Tom was already there, watching from across the street. He gave a slight nod to Detective Jordan as the team approached the front door. Judy answered in her robe, hair still pinned up, coffee steaming in one hand. She looked annoyed, like someone had just interrupted her favorite morning show. She didn't even get a word out before the lead officer said firmly, "Judith Marie Everett and John William Everett Sr., you are under arrest for custodial interference, conspiracy to defraud, falsifying legal records, and reckless endangerment." "What?" she gasped. "You can't arrest grandmothers." "I know what's best for my family," she snapped, stepping forward. "We were helping. That baby was never supposed to be Gail's. We did what we had to do." We were fixing it. She backed up, hands flying as she tried to argue you're making a mistake. As one officer moved to cuff her, another glanced past her shoulders into the house, then back at the sidewalk. Where's John Sr.? He asked sharply. Judy kept ranting. We protected that baby. Ziva is the real mother. But the officer was already signaling to his partner. One broke off and hustled around the side of the house, just in time to catch John Sr. quietly slipping out the back door, fully dressed, briefcase in hand, keys jingling in his pocket. He froze the moment he saw the officer waiting at the back gate. Going somewhere? The officer asked. John Sr. didn't answer. He just let out a long breath and slowly set the briefcase down on the patio bricks. Back at the front, Judy's voice cracked mid-sentence as she spotted her husband being led around the house in handcuffs. For the first time, she went quiet. As the officers guided them into separate vehicles, the neighbors watched silently from behind their curtains. The blinds didn't move. But they were watching. As the cruisers pulled away with both of them in the back seat. Back at our house, Jason's phone buzzed with Tom's confirmation. He looked at me and said, quietly, that's 2 down. Kevin nodded, already preparing for what came next. Ziva. David. And the Anton records. This wasn't over. The later that day at 9 a.m. sharp. Detective Jordan's team split into 2 units, one heading to David's office, the other to Ziva's house, accompanied by a social worker and child services. David was sitting at his desk in a busy, open-floor real estate office. A new client sat across from him, reviewing listings. The office buzzed with energy, phones ringing, keyboards clacking, agents moving between cubicles. He didn't notice the 2 plainclothes officers until they stepped right up to his desk. David Allen Brooks? He looked up, confused. Yes? Before he could even rise fully from his seat, one officer turned him and cuffed him smoothly behind his back. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit custodial interference, aiding in the unlawful removal of a minor, and child endangerment. You have the right to remain silent. David hung his head. The entire office froze. His client blinked, unsure whether to stay seated or stand. His coworkers looked on in stunned silence. His manager stepped out of an office, mouth slightly open, speechless as David was walked past the front desk, his badge still clipped to his collar. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. Everyone saw everything. On the other side of town, officers and a social worker arrived at Ziva's modest house. She was on the porch in pajama pants and an old sweatshirt, a cigarette in one hand and a phone in the other. She squinted at the officers. What's this about? One officer stepped forward. Ma'am, we're here for a welfare check on the infant inside. Please remain where you are. What? She's sleeping, Ziva said quickly. I was just taking a break. You can't. The social worker moved past her without waiting and entered the house. Within seconds, her voice called out, sharp and tight, we've got a neglected infant. Document everything. Inside, Alexis was in the crib, wailing, her diaper visibly soiled, the smell unmistakable. A bottle was lazily propped up with blankets, leaking formula across her onesie and onto the sheets. An officer called it in, adding child neglect and endangerment. Documented bottle propping and unhygienic conditions. Outside, Ziva's expression changed fast, from confusion to panic to rage. You can't do this, she snapped, shoving the porch railing. She's mine. Tammy is mine. You people don't get to come here and just take her from me. When the officer reached for her wrists, she backed up and shoved one of them hard. Don't touch me. You're making a mistake. She twisted, tried to bolt off the porch, but another officer blocked her path. They wrestled briefly before she was pinned and cuffed. Let me go, she screamed. You don't get to take her, I'm her real mother. But no one listened. No one even answered. The social worker came out a moment later, gently holding Alexis, red-faced and still whimpering, but safe. Ziva was still shouting as they loaded her into the back of the cruiser, her voice cracked and hoarse. Alexis was taken straight to the hospital. She was only a week old. Too small. Too new. And already hurting more than any child ever should. A nurse led us to the pediatric exam room, where Alexis lay bundled in a fresh hospital blanket. She was clean now, her cries softer, her eyes flickering open with exhaustion. But what the doctor said next was worse than anything either of us had prepared for. She has a severe milk rash on her neck and chest, the pediatrician explained gently. That's from formula sitting too long on her skin without being cleaned off. I reached for my husband's hand, my throat tightening. There's also diaper rash, very advanced. One of the worst I've seen in a newborn. This took days to develop. She wasn't being changed often enough. John Jr. looked down at the floor, his jaw locked, eyes wet. The doctor hesitated before continuing. And there's bruising. On her back. Small, but deep. Likely from aggressive burping or being handled too roughly. My hands went to my mouth. She's going to be okay, the doctor said quickly. She'll need monitoring, ointments, time, but she's a fighter. She's strong. I leaned over the side of the crib, gently brushing my fingers through Alexis's soft hair. My baby stirred faintly. You are safe now, I whispered. Mama's here. You're home. Meanwhile, across town, in a quiet office at the county records department, Linda Everett was just settling into her desk when two investigators entered with a county clerk and a plainclothes officer. She barely had time to set her coffee down. Linda Everett, the lead officer, said calmly, "You're under investigation for falsifying and altering official government records and you're under arrest for unauthorized access to restricted birth documents." Her eyes went wide. This wasn't me, I was helping my niece, this was family business. They ignored her. The county had already launched a full audit, every file Linda had touched over the last 3 years was flagged. Dozens of unauthorized access points. Dozens of corrected records. They weren't just investigating Alexis anymore. They were investigating everything. Linda was led out in cuffs as her coworkers stared in silence. And back at the hospital, I cradled my daughter gently, careful not to touch the tender bruises, whispering promises and love through quiet tears. This was the beginning of healing. But the fight wasn't over yet. Me and my husband arrived back at the house. The silence hit differently. Alexis was safe, but staying overnight at the hospital for monitoring. We were only home to grab a few things before heading back. That's when Donald pulled up at the curb, stepping out of his car with a thick folder tucked under one arm. He nodded at us, his expression unreadable. "Can we talk inside for a minute?" Once we were in the living room, Donald set the folder down on the coffee table, opened it, and took a breath. "While you were out getting Alexis back," he said, his tone quiet but firm, "I started digging. Just to see what I could find. But what I found might matter." We sat down, listening. Donald continued. "First, David. What he's doing qualifies as real estate transaction fraud and willful underreporting of income." He looked at my husband. "He's selling properties for one amount, then reporting a lower number on official documents to avoid taxes. That's tax evasion, plain and simple. And it's a felony. IRS Code Section 7201. Ziva," he said, flipping a page, "has been making about $50,000 a year running her social media management classes on Facebook. It's not registered. Not reported." He turned another page. "Your mother," he said, looking back at my husband, "has been selling those hand-knitted dolls online, Etsy, Facebook Marketplace, maybe even craft fairs. Based on order history and shipping invoices, I estimate around $30,000 a year. No tax filings. Nothing reported." My husband exhaled slowly, jaw tight. "And your father?" "Well," Donald said, tapping the last few documents. John's senior tax records are full of red flags. Multiple discrepancies, overlapping deductions, altered documents. I'll need to do a full audit with the team, but it doesn't look good. This could be damaging. He paused, then looked up. I didn't want to move on anything until I spoke to you both. I know this isn't the path you started down, but it could get them federally charged. What do you want to do? He didn't even get the question fully out before my husband said let's do it. Donald gave a single nod and began closing the file. As he turned to leave, he glanced back at me, a shy grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. I may not have grown up with you, he said softly, but you feel like a little sister. I had to do my part. And with that, he left us standing in the quiet house, surrounded by the pieces of what had been torn apart. But now, finally, putting those pieces back together. While Donald pulled together his team and began coordinating a full audit into the Everett family's finances, the hospital completed its internal investigation of Aunt Linda Everett, the records clerk. And what they uncovered went far beyond a single forged birth certificate. Linda had a pattern. Over the last 3 years, she had falsified, altered, or manipulated the medical records of at least a dozen children, most of them tied to ongoing custody disputes. In 3 separate cases, she changed clinical notes to make it appear that the father had physically abused the child, when in truth, the child had come in for routine accidents or non-related medical conditions. In 8 other cases, children admitted for the flu, food poisoning or dehydration had their charts altered to read as malnutrition, used as false evidence to paint mothers as neglectful and unfit, leading to emergency custody changes. Those cases were later matched with bank records showing large payments made to Linda, thousands of dollars. The legal charges being built against her included falsification of medical records, tampering with public records, perjury, as the records were used in legal proceedings, fraudulent concealment, obstruction of justice, and most damning, conspiracy to commit custodial interference for financial gain. When Detective Jordan was handed the report, he simply said, "She didn't just forge paperwork, she helped weaponize children." Back at the audit office, Donald's voice was calm but firm as he called Jason and Kevin. "We've got enough for federal charges. Justice, it moves slow. But it moves with every phone record we uncovered, every message we connected, every digital footprint we pulled. What they did became harder to hide. And over 6 months, the consequences finally caught up with them. Judy, my mother-in-law, faced charges of kidnapping, custodial interference, falsifying records, child endangerment, and resisting arrest. She pled guilty to avoid trial and was sentenced to 5 years in jail and 5 years of probation, along with a lifetime restraining order for Alexis. John Sr. was charged with conspiracy to commit kidnapping, evading arrest, tax evasion, and aiding in child endangerment. He was sentenced to 2 years of jail time, and after a federal tax audit, he was forced to pay a restitution order for over $180,000 in unpaid taxes and penalties. Ziva was charged with kidnapping, reckless child endangerment, resisting arrest, and assaulting a peace officer. She fought it hard, but the evidence was solid. She was sentenced to 10 years in jail, alongside psychiatric monitoring. David was found guilty of conspiracy, aiding in child endangerment, and real estate transaction fraud. He received a 5-year suspended sentence and 2 years probation, and his real estate license was permanently revoked. And he had to pay $90,000 in back taxes. Aunt Linda Everett? Her case drew national attention. She was charged with falsifying public medical records, custodial interference, conspiracy to defraud the court, tampering with official documents, accepting bribes and perjury in at least 3 custody cases. She was sentenced to 3 years in state prison and permanently banned from working in government again. An independent review was launched into all the family court decisions she'd touched. We sold the house. Not because we were running from the past, but because we were ready for something new. We wanted a fresh start. A clean slate. A place where every corner didn't hold a shadow or a memory we never asked for. We ended up in a quiet neighborhood just outside the city. Safe. Peaceful. Good neighbors. And, somehow, in a twist of fate that still makes us smile, we moved in right next door to Detective Jordan. Not planned. Just a good coincidence. But it felt right. Like the universe was making sure we'd never be left unprotected again. It's been a year and we're planning Alexis's first birthday. There are balloons in the garage, half-blown-up streamers on the dining table, and John Jr. has already made a playlist titled Baby Bops Volume 1. The theme? Ladybugs. She lights up every time she sees one in her picture books, so now, there are tiny red and black decorations everywhere, even on the cake stand waiting to be filled. She doesn't remember her first week of life. And she never will. But we do. And that's what makes every laugh, every toddling step, every little mama so much more precious. Ziva tried calling a few times in the beginning. She left voicemails. Sent letters. Even had her therapist reach out on her behalf. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't try to justify it. She just wanted to apologize. To say she finally saw how wrong they had been. How deep the damage went. How far they'd crossed the line. But we made it clear, we wanted no contact. Because sometimes, even when someone is genuinely sorry, the door still has to stay closed. And Judy? She's still angry. She tried to send more letters, same bitter words. You ruined our lives. You stole Ziva's baby. We were only trying to help. But now, the prison guards intercept everything. Her correspondence privileges were revoked after she violated the restraining order multiple times, letters, attempted calls, even trying to send messages through people we know. We're notified anytime she tries to reach out. It's part of the protective order now. Every attempt gets flagged, logged, and reported back to us. And because of her continued violations, the court added another 6 months to her sentence. She's not just blocked, she's being watched. And David? He never fought the charges. Never reached out. Never said a word. Not long after Ziva's sentencing, he quietly filed for divorce, packed up, and moved out of state. No apology. No explanation. Just gone. No one's heard from him since. As for John Sr., he's still in jail. His sentence wasn't the longest, but it was enough. And it hit harder than he expected. The IRS took his house in the tax case. Everything he tried to hide, all those business write-offs and altered filings, gone. But the legal punishment was only part of it. Everyone turned their backs on him. The neighbors. The old family friends. Even the few people who used to agree with him. They were tired. Tired of the arrogance. Tired of the control. Tired of the way he treated women like they were lucky just to be tolerated. Turns out, once the power was gone, so was the tolerance. He's alone now. Completely. And somehow, that feels like the one part of this story he finally earned. Have you gone through something similar? Do you have a family story you thought no one would believe? Drop it in the comments. Share your story. You never know who needs to hear it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if this story meant something to you. It helps more than you know. And remember, sometimes, family isn't who raises you. It's who shows up when the storm hits. Thanks for watching. Stay strong. Stay safe. And hug your babies tight.